Hey guys, welcome to The Rebels Advocate. I'm Joe, and before we get started, I should have done this last video or the video before, I can't remember, but I want to give a very special shout out to Kim D. I won't give your last name out, you might not like it, but Kim D is our latest patron. Went over to patreon.com/The Rebels Advocate and signed up to become a patron. And I definitely appreciate that so much. Thank you for that, Kim. Every little bit helps, especially as I'm looking to try to get this podcast going. I don't know how much it costs. I know it does cost something, you know, to keep one going. Not sure how much that'll be, but every little bit helps, and thank you so much. It is greatly appreciated. Now to today's show. If you watched my last video, you know, hey Joe, this is not what you said the next video would be on. You know, I know the last video I said our next video would be on how you can't know that God exists, and I still plan on doing that video. However, I had something happen last night. You know, had something scary happen last night, and I wanted to talk about it today because I think there's a couple things we can talk about in that. Talk about miracles a little bit, and prayer, and how to cope with, and how we cope with stressful situations, and how that's different between, you know, when you're religious and when you're an atheist. So last night I'm at work, and it's almost midnight, and you know, you kind of have your worst nightmare happen, and that's when you get a page and you call and they say you have an emergency call. That's never good. And so, you know, where I work, you can't carry your cell phones in. You know, you keep them in the car. And so when I talked to the supervisor, like whoever had made the emergency call, they had got disconnected. So basically, they didn't even really know who it was. They just knew it was an emergency call. So they told me to go to my car and, you know, try to, you know, get a hold of whoever it was. And guys, it is a long walk from where I work in the building to outside to my vehicle. It's a couple minutes of walking, and I'm telling you, everything, absolutely everything goes through your head. And you know it's not good. You're hoping for the best, but whatever it is, it's not going to be good. And so I finally make it out there, and I just hit video chat. I just, you know, video chatted my wife, you know, immediately. And when she answers the phone, it's, you know, she's holding my baby. My baby's crying, and my wife is tore out of pieces, and she has somebody on the way to get her, and they're rushing to the hospital. Apparently, my baby is having a hard time breathing. She's crying and she's wheezing and fighting. She's fighting to take a breath. Like she's having a real hard time even catching a breath. Her chest is, you know, heaving in and out, and it's as if she's struggling to breathe. And of course, my wife's tore out of pieces. This is, you know, got me tore up. So immediately, you know, I leave. So I have to leave work, and as you guys know, I have a long drive. So I'm an hour from my house, and the hospital is about, you know, 15-20 minutes in the other direction. So I'm a good hour and 20 minutes away from home, or from the hospital. And it's a long drive, and I try to never text and drive, but you know, I enabled voice text, and so we're in a group chat with my wife, my mom, and my sister, and I'm just trying to, you know, any updates whatsoever. And so here I go, you know. And I'm not going to lie to you, it's probably one of the scariest moments in my life. I don't know what's going on. I'm hoping it's nothing, you know, nothing serious. It could be a multitude of things, you know. But everything's going through your head, you know, from the simplest explanation to the most, you know, bizarre and just the most tragic. And so right here, I think is one thing we could talk about is how you cope with a situation like this as an atheist versus as a Christian, or as any believer for that matter. If you believe in a supernatural being that can intervene and, you know, can change things. So for me, as an atheist, it is a very helpless feeling. There's nothing I can do, you know, at all. Like, I'm helpless. I know that everything that needs to be done is being done. You know, they're getting her to the hospital. They're getting her to help. There's nothing more I can do except try to get there as soon as I can for moral support for my wife, you know, if nothing else. But as a Christian, there is a level of comfort, I think, because as a believer, you believe that you can do something. So if I was a believer, last night's drive would have been very different. What I would have done, I would have spent that hour and 15 minutes praying nonstop, praying for a miracle, praying, you know, I can't be sure, but, you know, just given what I believed before and guessing how I would believe now if I was a believer, I would probably be praying a prayer, something to the effect of, you know, God, I want your will to be done, but if it's your will, please, you know, let me keep my baby girl. I don't know how I can make it without my baby girl, you know. Something to that effect. I'd be pleading and begging for God to spare her life, to keep her safe. But I'd also be doing so, I would still be saying, you know, if it's your will. There's a couple reasons for that. One is you're kind of led to believe that's, you know, God has a plan. We should always want, you know, even if we don't understand what God's plan is, we should want, you know, things to work out that way. Because God knows better than we do. He knows what's best. Even if it may not seem like the best thing to us, in the long run it will be. And I also think a lot of the reason is because when you pray, if you want to believe, if you want to have faith, if you want to believe that God can heal people, that God can change things, you have to be able to count the hits and ignore the misses. You have to be able to explain away every unanswered prayer. And this is how you do that, very easily. You know, if I prayed all the way there and then my baby ended up dying, I could say, you know, God has a better plan. It was God's will. God needed another angel. Whatever makes me feel better. And again, this is an area where maybe religion gives you that extra comfort. I don't know. Maybe that's okay that you believe that, you know, for yourself. You know, if that helps you grieve, if it helps you. I haven't seen it to be the case. You know, I haven't seen, like, in reality, it feels like it would help you. It feels like believing that if you lost someone, that they're in heaven, that it seems like that would make things easier. I haven't really seen it to be the case, like, in watching how people grieve. And it's hard to really judge that because every single person grieves differently. regardless of their beliefs or whatever. But that is how I would kind of approach it. And then if I got there and everything turned out fine, it wouldn't really matter what the reasons were. Like, the outcome would have, like, in some way, it would have something to do with God. God intervened somehow. And you'll see that that's kind of what happened eventually anyway. So I make it to the hospital, but before we get there, let's talk about me now. As an atheist, I don't believe any of that, so I'm not going to spend an hour and 15 minutes driving, praying. So how did I cope? I'll be honest, on my way out, because I had to run back in to let them know I'm leaving, and I was breaking. I was breaking down. You know, everything's going through your head. And you guys know, like my little girl is my world. My wife and my little girl, that's my world. And I don't know what I'd do if I lost one of them. You know, so needless to say, I'm tore up. I'm in pretty bad shape. And I get to the car, and I pull out and I leave, and my instinct is to do 100 mile an hour all the way to the hospital. That's what the daddy in me wants to do. I really don't care about much else. And this is a weird thing where and again, I don't know that this is related, but I think the old me, that's exactly what I would have done. And trust me, I'm not preaching that that's the wrong thing. If you've done that, I would completely understand it. I'm just saying this is something weird that I've noticed about myself and the way I think. I think differently about a lot of things. Everything in me wanted to drive 100 mile an hour, wanted me to get to the hospital as fast as possible. I just wanted to see my little girl. I just wanted to hold her. But I knew as I pulled out, I knew there's nothing I can do. My baby will be at the hospital in a matter of minutes. I won't be there. Me getting there doesn't help get her to the hospital any sooner. Once she's at the hospital, there's nothing I can do. The doctors, the nurses, they'll take care of her from there. There's nothing I can do but be there. I can't help her in any way. I can help my wife, be there for her, but I'm not sure that I can help my baby in any way. If I drive 100 mile an hour all the way to the hospital, the only thing I will do is endanger my own life and the life of others. I know this is kind of a side tangent, but it's just kind of a look into how it's weird. I don't know if it's like I look at I rationalize everything a little differently now. So I didn't speed, you know, with the exception of maybe 5-6 miles over the speed limit, you know, and then, you know, on the country roads I do, yeah, on some of the country roads their speed limits are lower, and yeah, I probably went a little faster, but there's no traffic. It's late at night, there's almost no traffic. But I didn't speed because I knew there was nothing I could really do. There's no way, I wasn't going to help the situation. So I was just focused on getting there safely. So also, usually every time I get in the car, if I'm not making a video, of course, if I'm alone, I got a podcast going. It's what I do. I don't listen to music hardly ever. I turned my podcast on. I listened to different podcasts. And it was weird. On the way to work, I was listening to How to Heretic. And it's a good podcast. And they happened to have a guy on who was talking about dealing with death. And man, it was a crazy coincidence. That's what I was listening to going to work, and of course I got to work and had to cut it off during that interview. And when I come back out, of course, that's not what I'm wanting to listen to. I'm not wanting to turn anything on. I'm driving in silence. I'm crying. I got tears. Like I said, I'm going through every possible scenario of what could be happening, of what could happen. And I go from doing that to trying to calm myself down, tell myself everything's going to be okay. But finally I realized, I was like, all these thoughts, all this contemplation, all this thinking about all that, none of that's going to help. So I was like, I just got to focus on getting there. That's all I can do. And I turned my podcast on. And I tried to, just to kind of calm myself down and focus on what they're talking about. And I finished listening to them talking about the way we grieve as atheists and how we deal with death. And it was a good listen. And I'm not gonna lie, obviously nothing's gonna take my mind off of what's happening completely, but it did help calm me down. And eventually I do get some messages that they're at the hospital, they're working with her. I don't know a whole lot of what's going on, but they don't know a whole lot yet. And so finally I get there and I go in. And when I go in, they're still in the emergency room, and they're back in one of the beds. And I walk in, my wife is holding my baby girl, and she's got a little cup there that they have the oxygen run in that they holding up to her, kind of help giving her a little extra boost of oxygen. And I walk in, and my baby girl looks at me, and she just flashes a big smile because she saw Daddy. And I run over there. Sorry, everything's okay, guys. Don't But at the time, you just all to pieces. And I run over there and I just give a big family hug, group hug, as we call it. I just hug Mommy and I hug baby girl. And Mommy's all to pieces. She's tore up, I'm tore up. But my baby looks pretty good. She's breathing pretty good. And so they've done everything, they can do. And at that point, we're just waiting on tests. So at that point, they got her in there and they did breathing treatments. I think they gave her a shot of steroids. They took chest x-rays. They took blood samples. They took swabs. And so we're waiting on the test, and they're testing her for everything. And so we sit there, and after our group hug, I get my baby girl, and I did what I wanted to do all the way there. I just held her close, and she was wheezing a little, but for the most part, breathing good. Her oxygen levels were good. And I just held her and snuggled her. And she was wide awake. So finally the doctor comes in and he tells us the chest x-ray looks good, but she has swelling up here. Like around the vocal cords and stuff. Like that's where all the swelling happened, and that's what caused it to swell you know, to the point it was making it hard for her to breathe. They were still waiting on lab results, so we had, you know, we had to wait quite a while. And finally, they come in there and they explain everything to us. Here, you know, here's what's going on. We run every test, because she was never running a temperature, you know, or anything, so we weren't sure what's wrong. But it turns out she had what they call rhinovirus, type A rhinovirus. I've never heard of that, so that sounds scary immediately, rhinovirus. But it turns out it's a pretty common virus, I guess. It's not that big of a deal, but it can cause swelling like that. And in her case, it got, you know, really inflamed, I guess, and swelled more than normal. And you know, it was causing it to be very difficult for her to breathe. And I'm kind of happy that, you know, poor mom, you know, my wife had to deal with being there and seeing her struggling for breath, and I didn't get to see that part, and I know that had to tear her all to pieces. One of the nurses came in and he was telling me, you know, he said, yeah, she kind of had us all scared for a minute. But everything turned out okay, and the doctor, was like, you know, she's going to be fine. We monitored long enough. She's going to be okay to go home. She just needs to go back to the doctor tomorrow or today. So, you know, everything was good. We got a full explanation. We know exactly what happened, why it happened. You know, that's the beauty of modern science, and, you know, so there's not a whole lot of questioning of what happened. And so I go back out because my mom and stepdad's there, and they're in the waiting room because my mom had to leave. When I got there, she had to go out. They'd only allow 2 people back, and so they're waiting, you know. So we go back outside, and I love my mom to death. I'm not trying to dog her or throw this at her in any way, because I mean, this is a very typical response that I think a lot of Christians would have. And you would think the one place you could kind of get away from that would be the hospital. You would think, you know, you walk into a medical facility, this would be the one place you wouldn't have to deal with, you know, well, God did it, you know, that kind of woo and superstition and all that. But around here, no, you're not safe from it there, you know. Like, you know, I've been in hospitals, there's Bibles and Bible storybooks, and even doctors giving credit to God. Like, it's bizarre. But anyhow, we're out there now. This doctor has given us a full explanation of what happened. We know what happened. We know why it happened. Like, everything's been explained. I mean, obviously it's a big deal because she's having trouble breathing, but as far as what was wrong with her, it wasn't that big of a deal. You know, sure, it could have it, had it went untreated, it could have been, but it didn't, and it wasn't. But so we're telling my mom all about this. And, you know, and I was kind of telling us, you know, I just kind of briefly mentioned the nurse that had said, yeah, she had us all scared for a minute. And then there was another nurse who I didn't see. She didn't come in while I was there. And my mom was like, yeah, did you hear what she said? Said somebody come in, and this was before I got there. Said somebody come in and said, oh, yeah, she's doing a lot better. And the nurse said, yeah, she's a miracle. And I know it's a silly thing to argue about, maybe it's not that important. But I do think it speaks volumes to why people believe how they believe. To grasp for straws at that level, to grasp for anything that remotely might resemble a miracle in your mind. Now granted, my baby girl somebody didn't say a prayer and she was healed. She went to the doctor, she got treatment. They treated her for what was wrong with her, and obviously, I'm sure it didn't get rid of the virus, but it enabled her to breathe again. They did what they do, and yet some nurse standing there, says she's a miracle. And then my mom, and again, I love my mom to death. I don't want people to think this is me trashing my mom. But she did what basically any Christian I know would do. They grasped at that, and that's a reason to give God the credit for what happened. And it kind of blows my mind. And we see this a lot with miracles and people looking for miracles. And again, this is another example of counting the hits and ignoring the misses. Because let's think about something else. As you guys know, my daughter has other problems. She has problems bigger than what happened last night. My daughter still can't eat a meal. She was never able to take a bottle. She's doing some better. She's improving every day. She is eating some. She just won't eat enough to sustain her. So most of her food comes through a feeding tube. She has 2 therapists that visit every week in the home. Multiple doctor's visits. They're now they're coming this week to introduce a new therapist. And that will be 3 different separate therapists that will visit our home every week. They're working with her. She's improving, at her pace. But, obviously, she's not better. We have a long road ahead of us. We really don't know what kind of road we have ahead of us, because her condition is such that they really won't know how much it will impact her for some time. We have specialists. We have some specialists scheduled in the near future that we're hoping will really give us some better answers and possibly give us a even better path to getting the best care possible. But so all those are things that my mom and a ton of Christians, because our story kind of, we adopted our baby girl it was kind of a peculiar way. It wasn't a planned adoption. Things happened really fast, and my wife and I kind of went from just being a married couple with no kids to being a parent overnight. And it wasn't thrown on us. It was a choice that was given to us, and we chose it. And it was a little scary at first, but it's been the best thing that has ever happened to us. And so, kind of with the way the story unfolded, it kind of, a lot of people came on board, a lot of people was involved with it, and a lot of people really fell in love with this little girl. And those people have prayed. Trust me, they have prayed hard that she be healed. And she hasn't. And so, what you have to believe, as a believer, what you have to believe is that you've prayed nonstop that God would heal this little girl of all these ailments that she has. Help her be able to eat, would help her with her motor skills and the things she has going on. And what you have to believe is that God has ignored every single one of those prayers. Or you, as a Christian, you wouldn't look at it that way. You would look at it as God has another plan. That plan probably involves testing me somehow, testing my wife. And God will do that through a child, apparently, inflicting an illness on a child. You would have to believe that somewhere, there's a divine plan for why she's going through what she's doing. So God refuses to answer that prayer. But last night, when you pray for her, when she's having trouble breathing and you pray for her, again, God doesn't come down and immediately heal her, make it okay, open her airways. He waits. He waits. And he waits until about the time they start giving, probably middle way through the breathing treatments. And then God came down and opened her airways as she was being treated for it. That's what you have to believe. To claim this as a miracle, that's what you have to believe. And yet it's going to be claimed as a miracle. I've seen this happen. And I told you guys in a previous video that I had something at some point I want to talk about it's heavy. It'll probably be the hardest thing I've ever talked about, but it involves a lot of this, and it's difficult. But so I've seen this. I got a lot of experience with it, like just the lengths people will go and how far they will stretch just to try to claim something as a miracle. I've seen people, with cancer in just horrific pain, horrible pain, suffering, and then maybe one day they have a good day, which happens with a lot of people with different diseases that you'll have these days where all of a sudden that one day you feel really good, but they'll see that and they'll claim that as a miracle, and yet the cancer's still there. Yet the next day we're right back to square one, and you never see them come back out and say, well, wow, I must have been wrong. I thought this was a miracle, but I guess it wasn't. They never do that. They still count the hits, ignore the misses. At the same time, I've seen people that didn't have an ounce of religion in them. One story comes to mind. I worked with a fellow, this was years and years ago, and this had to be one of the most hated old codgers there. He wasn't a very good person. He was mean, especially to women. God, he was mean, he was grouchy. But that guy had cancer once. And it was pretty bad, and he went to the doctor, and they basically told him he probably wasn't going to make it. And he just decided he wasn't going back to the doctor. And I don't know what his thought process was, but he just wasn't going back. And I guess he was just waiting to die. But he never died. And eventually, time went on. Weeks turned to months, and months turned to years. And I guess there comes a point where you start wondering whatever happened to that cancer. So he went back. No cancer. Nobody can explain it, but no cancer. I don't know how you explain that. Did God heal this guy, this old codger? And it didn't make him any better. It didn't make him a better person. It's still horrible. Crazy things happen. We can't explain, it's hard to explain. Really good things happen to really good people, and really good things happen to really bad people. And likewise, really bad things can happen to both people. You know, I know it seems unreal that it would just be too much. It would be too much for me to lose either my wife or my baby girl. That'd just be too much. And if I was a Christian, I may take some comfort in thinking, well, God wouldn't put that on me. You know, at least not now. Not at our age, not right now. But that doesn't change reality. I can think that all I want. But as a realist, and you know, looking at things, I know that, you know, I could lose one or both of them today. Like, you know, anything could happen. They could lose me today. I have to be, you know, I don't know that you can be prepared for that, but the only way I cope with it is, like I said, you know, in my video where I was talking about life and death, like, I just, you know, try my best not to take a single day for granted. Enjoy every minute I have with the two of them, because regardless of what happens, regardless of whether something tragic happens, it doesn't, you know, if we have the most fairy tale life imaginable, it still ends. At some point it still ends. And so just cherish every moment. But I just wanted to talk about that because I found it, I don't know, frustrating. It's frustrating to me when something like this is something, you know, I kind of deal with all this and all this pain and being scared, this fear, and then you get done, you have this relief, and then at the end it's, well, God did it. It's just frustrating. And especially when you see the lengths that people will go to claim a miracle. You know, if you know, if you want to show me a miracle, you know, show me a full miracle. Like, I don't understand these half miracles. I don't understand these, God come down, like I was talking with a cancer patient, they have one good day, and it's like that was a miracle. God didn't heal the cancer. He didn't, you know, make them completely better, but we'll still count it. Like, man, what kind of miracle is that? What kind of God is that? I mean, that seems kind of, you know, half-assing it to me. But anyway, that's all I wanted to talk about. Just get it off my chest. Last night was definitely a scary night, and I'm so thankful that my little girl's doing a lot better. And it was scary. It was the best feeling in the world to get there and just hold her close and see her big smile when I walked through the door. That melted this daddy's heart. But so I appreciate you guys listening. Let me ramble a little bit. It's just some thoughts I had. I'm gonna head on into work and try to have a good day, and hope my baby rests good today and has a good day. We'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And if you want to be like Kim D, you can do so over at patreon.com/TheRebelsAdvocate. Thanks again, Kim, and you guys have a great day.